Now let's move on to voting rights. The Senate debated today over the filibuster rules. We're going to see Tom Cotton. I don't know if we're going to watch this whole 20-minute clip, but we're going to see Tom Cotton go back and forth with multiple Democrats. What you got to say, Tom?
Things like ban voter ID nationwide and use your tax dollars to support political campaigns. They tell us that Americans are living under Jim Crow 2.0, and they cite the recent Georgia election law as proof. Well, let's investigate this so-called vote suppression law. Under the new law, the state of Georgia will have 17 days of early voting. If this is Jim Crow 2.0, then
I believe it cut the days, didn't it?
Because the Democratic leader's home state of New York and the president's home state of Delaware were engaged in, I guess, what you'd call Jim Crow 3.0 as recently as last year, because New York only had 9 days of early voting and Delaware had no days, 0 days of early voting. Next, I've heard complaints that Georgia has reduced the number of ballot drop boxes in the state, even though they now require every county to have a drop box, as was not the case as recently as 2018, and that Georgia's added new security measures to prevent fraud. Once again, I hate to break the news that the Democratic floor leader's home state of New York had 0 ballot drop.
The Georgia law extends voter ID requirements to absentee ballots. It sharply limits the use of ballot drop boxes. It does expand weekend voting during the early voting period. It requires large precincts to take steps to limit crowd length. Criminalizes giving voters food and water while they wait in line. That's a big issue when you're waiting in line 8 to 10 hours. It shortens the time between election day and any subsequent runoff elections from 9 weeks to 4. Sharply contracting the early voting period for runoffs.
Boxes. And the president's home state of Delaware allowed for just 5 last year. And of course, one of the Democrats' favorite claims is that all those terrible Republicans down in Georgia have stopped campaign and political workers from giving food and drinks to people waiting in line at the polls. Where could Georgia have gotten such an idea? Well, as it turns out, the Democratic floor leader's home state of New York also has a nearly identical law banning such electioneering near polling places.
Banning such electioneering, and I bet they don't have as long lines.
A kind of new Jim Crow. That might surprise the 69% of black Americans who support voter ID. Now, what are they up to? This is a especially good question given the letter.
Now, the left has lost the argument on voter ID. The voter ID laws are very popular. The best we can do now is just fight to, if there's a voter ID law, they need to be handing out free IDs to everybody. That's the step we've got to take. Otherwise, it's unconstitutional because it amounts to a poll tax. I fucking blow Republicans' minds with this. I voted without a valid photo ID in 2020. I went and I showed my voter registration card. Why is that not a fucking enough? Why is that not enough? My license expired during the pandemic. I don't have a car. My license expired during the pandemic. The 2 times I had gone down before the pandemic to try to renew my license, it was like a fucking 4-hour wait every time. Another issue with voter ID. I just didn't feel like fucking waiting in line. License expired during the pandemic. I ain't going the fuck down there. So I voted without a valid photo ID. What's the issue with showing my voter registration card? How fucking hard would it be to come up with somebody's voter registration card? How are you going to commit fraud like that? We have to push for them to hand out free IDs to everybody if they're going to push for these voter ID laws. The reason why, the Brennan Center for Justice concluded that it was racist is because only 3 or 4% of the population doesn't have photo ID. Overwhelmingly poor people. And in this country, the overwhelming amount of poor people tend to be minorities. That's the way our society is structured. So, by using photo ID, Republicans with surgical precision were able to peel off 1 to 2% of the vote in places. That is almost certainly going to go to Democrats. Surgical precision. Now, the reason why they argued it was racist was in court. Because you can't target people based on their race. So if you argue in court that they are targeting them because they are a minority, it violates the law. Because you can't argue in court that it just targets poor people. That's not a legal argument, unfortunately. But Republicans twist everything. I've told enough stories tonight. We're going back to Tom Cotton.
That 28.
Thank you for being a freaking follower, though, Apple.
April 7th, 2017. To the leadership around here, urging them to oppose any effort to stop the Senate's tradition and custom of extended debate. Some of those senators are on the floor with us at this moment.
I love it when they bring this shit up because they did change the rules.
From Hawaii. And the junior senator from Maine.
It's kind of weird when you're trying to use their words against them, but you guys did the thing that they were rallying against.
Mr. President, I would invite, through the chair, any of those senators, if they would like to engage in a colloquy, to explain why they have changed their position since they signed that letter on April 7th, 2017.
Because Republicans did the thing.
I guess I don't have any takers. I will point out...
Because you did the thing!
Signed that letter.
Will the senator yield?
I will certainly yield.
Thank you.
All right, let's hear it.
Senator from Maine.
I'm one that signed that letter. First, let's talk about the letter itself. What it says is, we're united in our determination to preserve the ability of members to engage in extended debate when bills are on
Senator Angus King?
I agree with that. The proposal that's going to be put on the floor today is one that will allow extended debate. There are 2 points that have caused me to modify the position.
Now, apparently, they're only talking about doing a talking filibuster.
The nature of the issue that's before the body. If we were here talking about immigration or gun control or any of the other many issues that we consider, I wouldn't be taking the position that I am. I believe that the rules of the Senate are important and that extended debate is an important part of the Senate process.
Fucking Republicans don't care about the rules.
Fundamental structural changes, not policy changes, but structural changes that I believe, in spite of your comments, that in many states across the country are compromising the ability of our people to express themselves in our democracy. I consider that qualitatively different than a policy difference. And that's why I am here today to talk about revising the rules, not blowing up the filibuster, but to get back to what the filibuster actually means. And that is extended debate.
See, they're not even talking about the nuclear option, which is what the Republicans did.
We're exhausted until we've made a deal, until we've come to a compromise. But the problem
because Democrats are feckless and ineffective.
Is a distant cousin of the real filibuster. The radical change in the filibuster isn't what's being discussed today. It was made in 1975 almost by accident. In 1975, they were debating whether it should be 2/3 of senators present and voting or a lower number, and they compromised on 60 senators of sworn members. That was the focus of that discussion, and I've talked to parliamentarians who were involved in that discussion. I asked the specific question, did they really realize what they were doing by creating the mail-in, dial-in, no-effort filibuster? And the answer was no. They didn't discuss it, they didn't think of it. So what I'm talking about here today and what the proposal that will be on the floor later is to do exactly what this letter says, extended debate. Extended debate. And that's why I believe that what we're proposing today is in the deepest tradition of the United States Senate. What we are trying
It'll be interesting to see what Cotton has to say back to this.
The cheap, easy, dial in from your office, 60 votes, de facto supermajority requirement, which is not in the Constitution, which the framers expressly did not agree to. They put in a lot of checks and balances. 2 houses of Congress, 2/3 voting on treaties, 2/3 voting on an amendment, confirmation of the President, the Congress, the independence of the courts. All those were checks and balances. One of them was not a supermajority requirement in the United States Senate. Hamilton and Madison expressly said that that would turn democracy on its head. Democracy ultimately is about majority rule. And there should be...
And a right winger would be like, we're not a democracy. Man, we're a republic.
To offer
And
amendments...
you're wrong.
To offer germane amendments, I might add, and discuss and debate, but ultimately not have a veto. That's really what it comes down to here. Do you have a rule that says that the minority actually is in control of the legislative process? That's not what the framers intended. It's antithetical to what the framers intended. In fact, one of the reasons for the Constitutional Convention was the dysfunction of the Articles of Confederation, and one of the reasons cited for that dysfunction was a supermajority requirement. So, yes, I voted, what I supported 3 years ago, I still support. The language is full, robust, and extended debate. And that's what's going to be proposed later on. And I would, if you guys will vote for it, this debate can go on as it should for weeks and perhaps months, because it's that important. But I don't have any apologies to make. If I have to choose between a Senate rule as it works now, which, as I say, is a distant cousin of the real filibuster, and democracy itself, I'm going to take democracy every single time.
Well, I thank the Senator from Maine for explaining the change in position. I was not seeking an apology, merely an explanation, since I haven't heard that.
Didn't seem like it was a change in position, did it?
I can respond to a few of these points. So the Senator from Maine said it was the nature of the issue at stake. Well, first off, I'd point out I have the letter in front of me here. It's very short. It's only 2 paragraphs long. There's nothing in there about the nature of the issue at stake, about whether we're talking about immigration or gun control or, in this case, election takeover laws.
Not an election takeover.
Referred to the cheap and easy filibuster. I don't necessarily agree with that characterization, but I would point out that that's exactly the kind of cheap and easy filibuster that was in place in 2017 when 28 Democrats signed this letter. I also point out that I wouldn't necessarily agree with the characterization that the current filibuster was created by accident in 1975. We can have a debate, but the rules and customs under debate today go back to the second decade.
P.O. Beeson.
Second decade of the United States Senate.
Howdy from Alabama as well.
More importantly, every time those rules have been modified, up to and including the most recent changes on the legislative calendar, they've been modified in accordance with the rules, not using the nuclear option.
Spider Pickle, what's up?
So we can.
Is that a sexy ant? Not a sexy aunt, a sexy
we
ant.
had a few other signatories that letter arrive. We have the senior senator from Colorado. We have the senior senator.
Could be an alien.
We have the senior senator from Montana. And we have the letter's chief Democratic author the junior senator from Delaware. I asked earlier through the chair if any senators would like to explain their change in position. Since those senators have joined us, if they would like to explain their change as well, I would invite them into a colloquy.
Would the senator yield?
I'd be happy to yield.
It doesn't seem like he actually responded to Senator King.
I'm struck by your comment that in all previous situations,
Been struck by a smooth criminal.
that the rules have been modified by a change of the rules that is done through the regular rule process. Because I'd encourage you to read up on your...
They are debating ending the filibuster.
In fact, under Senator Byrd's leadership, 9 times...
In order to pass voting
changed
rights,
their
the John Lewis
interpretation of
bill and the
existing
For the
rules.
People Act.
And they didn't do it through a formal rules change process. They did it with an interpretation of the chair being sustained or by reversing the interpretation of the chair. And you've been here when a nuclear option modified the rules.
What the fuck? Amaru, what the fuck? That was alien ant form? You're fucking with me now, aren't you? You're fucking with me now. You're fucking with me now. Don't do that. Don't do that. I know you well. You're fucking with me. I know you well enough to know you're fucking with me. No, they're not gonna make any progress. Manchin and Cinema are gonna hold this the fuck up. It ain't gonna happen.
To change the requirement for closing...
This is just to look busy until the midterms.
And you've been here...
The Democratic Party is done. The Democratic Party is done. Nothing else is going to get passed this year.
Not by changing the rules formally, but by reinterpreting it through a nuclear option in regards to decreasing the number of hours for debate on district judges. It also goes back to the fact that your team...
I hope I'm wrong. I doubt I'm wrong.
...on how reconciliation is done in order to be able to do tax cuts for the rich. And then...
And they haven't even passed a budget yet.
On our side, advocating...
We're just operating on a continuing resolution. This is still Trump's budget.
For the Trump tax cuts of 2017 changed the rule again. So at least...
I'm so disgusted with everything that's going on.
Democrats and Republicans have resorted to reinterpreting the rules on various occasions. Just a point of clarification that your statement was wrong.
I appreciate the comments of the senator from Oregon, and I want to commend him for principled consistency on this question. He did not sign that letter. In fact, one of the earliest conversations I had with any Democratic senator in 2015 was with the senator from Oregon about some of these very questions. He has had these reservations about the cloture rule, about the rights and customs of extended debate. He has not changed his view on those positions, so I commend him. I will point out, he mentions the nuclear option on the Supreme Court. Of course, that simply followed what the former Senate Democratic leader Harry Reid did in 2013 on the executive calendar. I will also point out that that happened in February.
Because they would not give any federal judges a vote under Obama. They blocked everything, just the way they're blocking everything with Biden.
But if there's no more extended debate on this question, I would invite the senator from Virginia through the chair.
President, if I might respond. Senator Cotton, what Angus said, and I'm so glad
Tim
Senator
Kaine
Langford has stayed in the room because you've been saying we've changed our position. You just really need to read the letter, and I do appreciate that you put it up because others were referring to the letter.
I appreciate that. Fucking Matt Walsh is a douchebag.
Exactly what you read. We are united in our determination to preserve the ability of members to engage in extended debate.
I like to think I gave him his
On the
ass.
Senate floor. We couldn't even debate this bill. You guys wouldn't let us.
Just to be clear, this guy made a joke about how much I can bench press. This guy right here. It's kind of, I said I could bench press him. It's kind of kept me up at night. Could I really? I've tried to search out pictures of him next to other people standing. This is like the only standing shot I can find of him. Wanted to see him like next to Shapiro, Charlie Kirk and shit. Apparently somebody said on IMDb it says he's 6 foot tall. I kind of doubt it. I'm 6 foot. I'm also about 205, 210. Once upon a time in my life, I was about 135 and I was very skinny. Now, I'm not saying I'm muscle by any means. I'm fucking fat now. But like I could go heavyweight if I wanted to in the WWE. I think I look like her. Many people come up to me and are like, "You look like you shred guitar," and I'm like, "I wish I could." I fucking love music. That's how I got into broadcasting. Is like I wanted to be a rock star, but I ain't got no fucking musical talent. I can talk though. So.
You kept using the 60-vote block on the motion to proceed so that we couldn't get on the bill. In the 5 years since 2017, many of us have come to realize this is what we want, but the current abuse of Senate rules is blocking us from having discussions about voting rights or about matters that you think are important. This is
you keep giving me product ideas tonight
when bills are on the Senate floor, and that is what the
Dan Crenshaw stickers are a great idea.
When we vote on it later today, to move to a talking filibuster instead of a secret filibuster. The way to look at the rule change that we're going to contemplate later is if you really love the filibuster, and the word filibuster isn't in this letter at all, but if you really love the filibuster, do you demand that it stay secret, or should it be carried out open, publicly, in view of the voters and your Senate colleagues? That's what the vote will be. We have listened to those of you who have said, don't abolish the filibuster, don't nuke the filibuster, don't blow up the filibuster, don't weaken the filibuster. And the only change
he was like doing a dance with it there.
The filibuster be a public filibuster, not a secret one. And so you stood on the floor and asked if we would join you in that operative phrase, engage in extended debate when bills are on the Senate floor. The combination of the block on the motion to proceed together with the paper pocket filibuster where people do not have to show up to speak, much less to vote. We can restore the filibuster, frankly, to what it was during the vast majority of the Senate's history and require that people actually do it and be accountable to their colleagues and to the public, and that's what we propose to do.
Mr. President, Mr. President, I invite the senator from Colorado to engage in colloquy.
Thank you. I appreciate that. I appreciate that from the senator from Arkansas. I, just along the lines of what my colleagues have said, would also say that
the fascist from Arkansas.
Very clear that I don't want this place to turn into the House of Representatives. I think that would be a huge mistake. But
translation, I don't want the people represented. I don't like democracy.
To behave.
This is a Democrat.
And the history, admittedly is opaque, but it is very clear to me that the modern abuse of the filibuster represents very little in the way of traditional Senate practice or what the framers were considering. So I can imagine finding ourselves to a place where we actually have extended debate, where we actually have a public filibuster like we used to have. Everybody remember?
Yeah, you should have to Mr. Smith Goes to Washington it.
Of the Senate versus the secret filibuster that acts as a perpetual veto by the minority on the majority, something that the framers clearly were trying to avoid, and at the same time gives the minority the chance to hold the floor, persuade the American people of their point of view, amend legislation in ways that is unimaginable in the House, and then in the end gives.
I like that they're all double masked now. So after all the
all over the world that aren't
fucking
held up by the kind of veto we're talking about. There's not
outbreaks that have happened
that I'm aware
on Capitol Hill. They finally started really taking it seriously.
With which we compete, that has a filibuster. So I'd say that other piece of this The idea that we're going to seesaw back and forth and back and forth and back and forth, I think the reality is that's not what happens in other places that don't have a filibuster. And I believe we have the opportunity, if we're actually having a public debate, not sitting in our office or, off fundraising, but instead having a public debate on the floor.
Off fundraising.
That the American people.
That's how they spend most of their time, and it is disgusting.
For their position.
I am for public financing of campaigns. Take the money all the way out of it.
We don't ever get the chance to do that here because we never even have a debate in the world's most deliberative body. So if we've got a disagreement tonight about the form of all of this, my hope is that in the wake of this, if we're not successful, we actually do the American people a favor by creating...
You know what this Senate could use? Some hentai.
I have been here now for 12 years.
Italians know how to do it.
And I can tell you, the Senate doesn't work. It can't get its basic business done, much less make hard decisions. And I think...
There you go, the back and forth with the Republican asshole Tom Cotton with several Democratic senators.